Hey, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, BabyMetal fan, and I am actually talking about BabyMetal today. I'm actually going to do a video that I kind of never thought I would do. This is for Elevator Girl, because I'm working through the Metal Galaxy album. I can be honest with you, right off the bat, this is not one of my favorite BabyMetal songs. I'm a word guy, and as you will see, the words of this are fairly slight. And it's missing some of the components of BabyMetal songs that I really like. But it's fun, and it's energetic, and it's another one of those songs that I'm sure is way more powerful if you get to see it live. So yes, here we go. Elevator Girl. Okay, before the lyric starts, let's talk for a little about the sound. So it has that quite synthesized background, but it still has the heavy guitar sounds. It's not distinctively riff driven like a lot of BabyMetal, and one of the things that makes this song relatively unusual is that we don't have that sort of showy instrumental work that we get in other songs. There's no solos. There's no very distinctive licks and guitar ornamentations that we get in a lot of BabyMetal sounds. So it's very direct, very driven. It's a very short song as well, right? Let's see if I can make sure that my commentary is also short.
Hey lady, are you going up, da 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 down? No matter what you say or what you do, you're going da 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 down. Are you going up or going down? Hey lady, are you going up, da 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 down?
So the first part is pretty straightforward, obviously, and it's in English. I talked about this a little bit with Dada Dance, the decision to sort of make this album sort of clearly face outwards and cross into international markets. And this is a very heavily Englished song. Now, as any BabyMetal fan will know, there are actually two versions of this song. I'm going to start by talking about the English version and then come to the Japanese, even though the Japanese version was produced first. Hopefully that will become clear. So, like the music, the lyrics are very simple. Hey lady, are you going up or down, right? No matter what you say or what you do, you're going down, down, down. Obviously, we established the core metaphor, which is also being set up in the visuals of the elevator as a transportation system that moves you up and down. So it's a great metaphor for aspiration, for the ups and downs of life, the idea of life as a roller coaster, right? And I think this comes across particularly strongly in the English language version. Yeah, okay, so it should be said, of course, that while this is the English language official video, the actual performance is clearly not in English. If you look closely, the lips don't match up, and the choreography doesn't match the lyric, okay? And this is one of the things we have to talk about, because the lyric is not not a translation of the Japanese version. So the English chorus section was written apparently by Joe Inoue, who also goes by Joe Metal, who was approached by the BabyMetal team and asked to do this. Joe is a bilingual Japanese-American recording artist, and who's done a video in which he talks about doing the lyric for this song, which I'll probably link it to in the description. And one of the things he makes very clear is that he does not translate the original Japanese. It seems like what he was commissioned to do was to create words that would have a youthful, energetic, cool, female kind of tonality to them, and that's what he went for. So, girl, we're going up, girl, we're going down, see the whole world spin, spin, spin around. Life can be such a pain in the butt, going up, going down, going to hell, yeah. One of the things that we notice is that in moving away from the translation of the Japanese, which I'm going to come to later, we kind of also move away from some of the elevator metaphor. There's nothing in the Japanese version about the world seeing the world spin, spin, spin around. And he clearly does that. He adds that because he likes the sound and the repetition of the spin. But it's not actually something that an elevator conveys, right? When you go up and down, even if you go up in a glass elevator, the world doesn't spin around. There's a frivolousness to the English lyric, a casualness, a flippancy, which I think is deliberate, but is very different from the Japanese. And he, in the video that he did, he talks about wanting to get a kind of Valley Girl kind of sound. And he equates the Valley Girl sound with a kind of cool young woman, American woman. It's a little odd to me. It seems like, from the sort of early 90s onwards, where Valley Girl English has appeared in movies and TV shows and stuff, it's usually floated as something which is not of itself cool, right? That is sort of clearly frivolous, somewhat superficial in the way it's represented in the movies, right? And the sort of standard strategy of those films is to then recoup the seriousness of the character through other means. I'm thinking of things like Clueless, Legally Blonde, even characters like Cordelia in the early seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Where they have this sort of, you hear in their language a kind of somewhat narcissistic, trivial focus, right? And then those stories go out of their way to try to show that there's more to those characters than meets the eye. But the language of itself does not connote that. If people associate that with cool, it's the people who sound like that rather than people who don't sound like that. Life can be such a pain in the butt. Again, it's a throwaway, disposable kind of phrase. It's not a statement of seriousness. It's a trivial concern. It's a minor inconvenience. It's not anything serious. It's like, oh my gosh, life's so scandalous. And there's that Valley Girl speak again. And Joe in the video is very pleased with the fact that he rhymes oh my gosh with scandalous. Though I have to say, life's so scandalous doesn't mean anything at all, right? There's no sense of the word scandalous that fits with life itself being scandalous. I just don't understand that. But it's clear from the way he talks about it that he's not interested in sense. He's interested in sound and tonality, and he's looking for something which is upbeat, right? One day I'm happy, one day I'm a mess. Hang on, because I'll never give up. Going up, going down, going up, going to hell, yeah. So, and that hell yeah becomes not like I'm going to hell. Yes, I am. It's like I'm going, hell yeah, right? Which is, there's something quintessentially American about this version of the song, right? Especially that hang on, because I'll never give up, which has a sort of faintly Japanese sense of perseverance, right? As in karate and those kind of songs. But this seems more assured of its own success. So in that sense, I think it's more American. So, that's the closest we get to a sort of BabyMetal instrumental kind of sound. Those sort of descending, arpeggiating little licks there and the overlapping guitars. It's striking to me that in this video, the band sort of vanishes into the background, that there's no foregrounding of the instrumentation at all, because the song doesn't do it either. Okay, so we're now into repetition, right? This is a very, very simply structured song. I love in the choreography we get to see Moa swagger a little, and you notice the gestures of pointing uh, and this motion, right, that we get. And as I say, it doesn't clearly connect to the English version of the lyric. So let's talk for a second about the Japanese version. Ue marimasu, shita e marimasu. So going up, going down. Shimaru doa ni oki o tsuke kudasai. So beware of the closing doors. Tsugi wa jigoku ni tomarimasu. So next stop is hell. So a little different from the English version. Yeah, Chikai ni senkai masaka-sama. So going down to the 2000th floor basement. Hiaburi harijigoku no fudoa desu. It's the floor for hell with burning needles, pins. Dakara itsumo inochigake. So again, no pronouns as usual. So life is constantly at risk. Always, my life or your life is constantly at risk. Or, so always take the chance with your life, risk everything because we're going down to hell. So you can read it a couple of different ways. So all of these things, the calling out of the floors, the mind the closing doors, the choreography about the closing doors, the choreography which looks like pointing but I think is actually button pushing, and the vertical palm gesture which we see at the beginning is all evocative of something that I think explains why the English version is so different, right? As I said, the English version, the elevator girl is a girl who rides on an elevator, and it becomes a metaphor for the ups and downs of life. But in Japan, at least potentially, elevator girl means something different. Elevator girl means elevator operator, which looks like this.
失礼いたしました。いらっしゃいませ。こちらのエレベーターは13階まで参ります。ご用の階はお申し付けくださいませ。恐れ入りますが、レストランは11時から営業いたします。メリ参ります。13階までのご用の階へお止めして参ります。メリ参ります。13階まで参ります。お待たせいたしました。毎度ご来店くださいまして誠にありがとうございます。こちらのエレベーターは13階まで参ります。8階は食器、家庭用品、健康プラザ、ペット、インテリア、ギフトサロンがございます。ありがとうございます。
So, in certain Japanese stores, particularly department stores, you will still come across elevator operators. You know, it's an odd thing. It's a sort of throwback cultural job, which no longer has a clear purpose, right? Because in the old days, obviously, elevators were quite complicated, potentially dangerous, and they required people who were trained to operate them, and that was always the case. As elevators became simpler to use, computerized, electronic, then the elevator operator becomes a luxury item. And I think that's the point in Japan, right? It's a bit like a greeter at Walmart. There's no clear purpose for it, except that it conveys a notion of service, a sort of old world relationship between customer and shopkeeper, which is supposed to suggest something sort of classy and elegant. So these women, usually, who are employed in Japan to run the elevators, to welcome people on, to establish this sort of very courteous, very polite, telling you where everything is, operating the buttons, making sure that the elevators run efficiently. But it's not a strictly necessary job, right? So in the English version, as I say, the elevator is merely a vehicle. which takes you places, and then you get off and you walk away and you don't think about the elevator again for the rest of the day. If you're an elevator girl in the sense of an elevator operator, then this is your life. Taking other people up and down, all day, making sort of polite statements in ways that are, this is not skilled labor. And, you know, I'm sure these people come in for a certain amount of passive-aggressive contempt. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a good job. I don't know. It seems a little, do you get a lot of job satisfaction from it? My guess is no. So if the elevator goes to hell, right, we down the sort of 2,000 floor basement drop, this is sort of evocative of a specifically Buddhist notion of hell. And, you know, in traditional Buddhist scripture, hell's like loads and loads of different places. And some scriptures define it in, like, here are the 8 levels of hell. Here are the 16 different hells. Here's the 106, you know, there are a lot of different hells, each one which is catered to people who have done something, a particular kind of sin, where you are purified. And this is one of the things, I'll come back to this, about the Buddhist notion of hell, which makes it different from the Christian hell. Because Christian hell, in traditional terms, when you die, you either go to heaven or hell, right? Within a Protestant Christian model. And both of those places are eternal. Wherever you go, you're there forever. But of course, in the old Catholic sense, there was also a kind of middle place called purgatory. The middle place wasn't necessarily in between in terms of, like, it wasn't super great or it wasn't super painful. It was like hell, but you eventually leave, right? You're there for a limited amount of time until you are purified, and then you can go to heaven. And the Buddhist hell is a bit more like that, right? That you're there for a huge amount of time, but it's a finite amount of time after which you then get to sort of move on and re-evolve. Now, I don't know a tremendous amount about Buddhism and about this kind of theology, but what I'm told is that, you know, from as early as the 13th century in Japan, there have been notions of these hells not as literal places that you go to after you die, but a kind of state of mind, mental places where body and mind being sort of unified, and the kind of rebirth that we think about, reincarnation that we think about as a sort of literal thing often in Buddhism, becomes a kind of constant metaphor for your own evolution, your own improvement that is happening sort of moment to moment until you attain nirvana, enlightenment, which is the sort of lack of self, right? To sort of evolve away from a sense of self. Now, that of itself, of course, is a very Asian concept, which in some ways doesn't sit well with American individualism. So this is, again, I think partly a kind of explanation for why the two versions of the song are so different. That the American version is very much about, well, life's tough, but I'm going to kick its ass, you know? Hell yeah. Whereas the Japanese version is not just life is tough, but life is hell. Life is being sort of serving other people all the time and just going up and down, not seeing the world spinning around, but sort of stuck in this place that takes you down into the sort of, you know, the torture realm. But there is perhaps a hope that you sort of evolve beyond it, at least mentally, psychologically. So that line about dakara itsumo inochi gake, so, you know, life is a constant risk, or I'm constantly risking my life, or therefore you should always risk your life, I think is a really sort of loaded, difficult way of processing the difficulties of life. This is to put way too much on this slender song, but I think it sort of shows the way that the Japanese version has just a little bit more gravitas, a little bit more weight to it than the American version, which seems so light, flimsy. And I think it's one of the reasons that a lot of people prefer the Japanese version, even if they don't actually understand the lyric. It feels like there's more to it. Pointing that the button pushing. You know, you think about it, it's like if the band, if the group itself become the elevator girl, and if we think of it in the Japanese sense of being the elevator operators for other people, then there's a sense, right, in which they are both, you know, on the journey, being taken places, but they're also responsible for taking other people. And in the sort of musical context, they're the ones taking us ups on the ups and downs of life, and hopefully finding a way to sort of bring us joy, satisfaction, fulfillment, nirvana. I'm straining a metaphor, but you see what I'm saying. And of course, you know, it's easy to sort of look at a video like this and say, oh, you know, being a pop star is all awesome and great and everything's wonderful about it. But of course, it's also hell, you know, and it takes a tremendous amount of work, some of that work being somewhat thankless in order to get to where you are. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say. I wanted to keep this video short, and I am going to keep it short. I don't want to milk the song for more than is in it. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. As ever, like, comment, subscribe. A couple of people have been sort of chiming in and sending me information about songs coming up. Philip Gregory, thanks for stuff that you sent me. I guess I will continue doing these, at least for a while, not least because nobody's watching my Polka Dot Stingray videos, which makes me very sad. But anyway, okay, I will talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.